Welcome to the real world.
The Animatrix, let's do it.
Okay, welcome back to the Scorchers, episode 4. This is our podcast miniseries looking at the Matrix. We have done the trilogy of films, so it's time to finish this off with the Animatrix, a collection of, as it sounds like, animated films set in the world of the Matrix. My name is Matt Waters. I'm joined, as always, by Mike Thomas. I say as always, I'm more frequently joined by Ben Phillips these days. But, Mike, how are you?
I mean, I'm a little wounded by this,
I mean, that's just the facts. Like, I would like us to be able to sustain 2 ongoing podcasts at the same time, but it's tricky. But I still value our time together. We do good content. You can listen to it all at entertherealworld.com. Mike, how the hell are you?
I'm still a little thrown by this comment, quite frankly. I'm fine. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to
be the bigger person. In the last episode, you opened with perhaps the nicest thing you've ever said to anyone by saying you always had a good time podcasting with me. Yeah. So we've switched.
I'm regretting that. I'm regretting that.
You know what? It's some sort of Greek myth, like Aesop's fable type thing. It's a lesson to be learned here. I don't know. Let's talk about the Animatrix, though.
So let's just move on before we say something we're really going to regret.
Yeah, okay. I hate/love you. Either way, friendship over. Let's talk about the Animatrix, though. So, a collection of films that came out alongside Reloaded, I believe, to sort of boost. I wasn't really promoting it. It's just sort of all tying in. Like, they went big with the sequels. They did a lot of stuff. There was a lot of marketing, and as part of that, they had a video game, and they had this, the Animatrix, which attempts to, I don't know if it fleshes out the world. Some of them do, and some of them are just like neat little stories set in the world of the Matrix. Some of them suck. Some of them are pretty cool. So I guess we're going to go through them one at a time.
Maybe it's just because we're like as deep in the Matrix world as I will probably ever be in my life. I was pretty into this as a project. I have no memory of it existing beyond one day seeing the Ultimate Matrix collection in a Barnes & Noble and seeing like the Animatrix included and me thinking like, what the fuck's the Animatrix? So this wasn't really on my radar at all at the time. But like watching it now, like, for someone who has said repeatedly, I'm not really interested in the universe of the Matrix as much as I'm interested in the 3 main characters. Somewhat amusingly enough, I was very interested in this mythology-building idea that has very little to do with the 3 main characters. I think that was just because all the stories were pretty short and self-contained.
Yeah.
Most of them, I'd say, got me more invested in what's going on than almost any additional character that Reloaded and Revolutions introduced.
You mean Ghost wasn't your favourite new character? Come on. You don't even remember who Ghost is, do you? Ghost is. Niobe's partner.
I don't. Yeah, I thought this was kind of just like a neat little project. I'm sure it cost a lot of money.
Sure.
But it also seems to have made a fair amount of money. So, cool.
Yeah.
This is one of those happy things that exists from a very passionate nerd culture. That's what I would say. It's like cool things like this don't happen nearly enough, and they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be consistent and wonderful. It's just kind of cool that it exists, and I am happy about it.
My memory of it is they aired these really late at night on TV over here, and I was just flipping through channels and I saw something and I was like, what is this? And then I realised it was the Second Renaissance, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And I don't know if they aired all of them, but I certainly caught like 3 or 4 of these. And I remember Final Flight of the Osiris got a lot of, I don't know, I feel I saw it advertised, like the thing for the Animatrix is those 2 fighting in the dojo and stuff. And it's very cool to give people this kind of, I mean, there was no need to do this, but it was just kind of good fan service, I think, of like, here's some Matrix-y stories. And a lot of these are written and directed by people who are not the Wachowskis, who wrote and directed all 3 movies. So it's cool to see other creators get their hands on other people's toys, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, you said the phrase fan service, which normally has negative connotations, but I think it'd be nice if fan service meant more things like this.
Yes.
A low-stakes scenario where, as you said, other creators, other artists could kind of just dive into an established world and just give their little take on it. There were definitely a couple I didn't like, but, that's the process of, creativity and letting, multiple perspectives in on the world. So as a macro idea, this was a huge win for me. Something that I'm really glad that, I got to see on the Blu-ray collection. And, this is cool. Let's dive in.
Okay, so the first one is, as I mentioned, Final Flight of the Osiris. Written and directed by the Wachowskis, produced by Square USA, who brought you that just hot piece of garbage, Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within.
Was it also directed? I thought it was... No, it was directed by Andy Jones. It was written by the Wachowskis.
Yeah, it was written by the Wachowskis, sorry. Square USA did Final Fantasy: Spirits Within, which is an infamously bad film. And it looks a lot like that film. This documents... I mean, the clue's in the name. The ship, the Osiris, they're the ones who found out that the machines were tunneling towards Zion, and they try desperately to get a message to someone to warn them, and you see at the beginning of The Matrix Reloaded that they have received word. That comes from Niobe, and we bridge these gaps through the video game that Mike refuses to acknowledge exists. This is the one that, clearly I think they spent the most money on. It looks bad now, but at the time...
It looks really bad.
Yeah, at the time this was good animation. Now it looks like... I think so. It reminded me of, in Blade 2, where they get into their hideout and it very clearly switches between CGI and real people. It reminded me of that a bit in the way they moved. It was just all a little bit too... the limb proportions seemed wrong. I don't know. It was all motion captured and shit. It's just... It looks bad.
Get the fuck out of here. This was... I thought this looked terrible.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
I am floored by this revelation. I'm so glad you're able to bring that insight as you're always able to do.
What, that it's motion captured?
I mean, that you learned that. I didn't learn that.
Oh, right.
I read the trivia page. I didn't see that there.
Oh, I watched the credits to learn the names of who directed all of them. And there was motion capture.
Also, you didn't even learn who directed it. So I'm glad you're.
Well, I didn't write it down.
This is why we're a team.
Okay.
Yeah, I think first off, it should be noted how ugly this looks. It's pretty jarring when you're in the dojo, I guess, and the fight, and it's right away, it kind of just slaps you in the face how ugly this animation looks. And I do admit that kind of gave me all right, what did I get myself into? This kind of looks like cheap, modern, daytime cartoons that, the kids watch these days, where they just don't put as much money into the animation. Apparently it was the opposite. This was the best they could do at the time.
I mean, this style of animation doesn't age well.
No. Luckily, though, if this animation was paired with some of the other stories, it probably would be almost a total disaster. Luckily, this is a really condensed, sharp story that, had one of the rare ones that had a real sense of urgency, so it kind of hooked me in. And it was kind of the one also clearly the most directly connected to...
Nice little prelude to Reloaded.
Yeah. The major happenings of the Matrix films we know and love. Even there's one that even has Neo in it, but that one doesn't even feel as connected as this one does.
No, this is the most explicitly this is. Yeah. I mean, the Wachowskis wrote this one.
They wrote it. I think I read that it aired before Reloaded in some places, if not in all places. I don't remember it, so
no, it didn't for me.
But yeah, I mean, the basic idea is these two very, very horny people.
I mean, we can't avoid this. They erotically sword fight each other down to their underwear, and it's
It's interesting. It is by far the horniest piece of Matrix mythology committed to film.
Yeah, I'm not against a horny sword fight. It's just this isn't particularly well executed. I don't think. It's not aided by the way it's animated. I don't think. I think there is a way you could shoot this exact script and make it less gross. I guess. Well, it's not gross. It's just trashy. I don't know.
I don't want to say it's gross. It's an equal opportunity. Offender.
I mean, at least she checks him out as well, but there is a lot more of her butt.
The male gaze and the female gaze is at work here.
Sure.
But it's weird. It's very horny, and in a way that you're like, what are we watching here?
Yeah. Where is this leading?
I mean, if you had told me after the first 5 minutes of erotic sword fighting that this was actually connected to the main film,
it's the most important one.
They are about to start doing it on the floor right now, clearly. And that did not happen. They have two real professional, like, veteran voice actors in these roles. Kevin Michael Richardson, who would later play Deus Ex Machina, and Pamela Adlon, who people probably are most familiar now with from Lucky Louie, and Better Things. And if you notice in Better Things, she's slightly autobiographical, and she's playing a voice actress in that show, and that's because she is a voice actress.
Recess, man. King of the Hill.
Yeah, those things. But yeah, it's they set the stakes. The Squiddies, what do they call them? The machines?
The Sentinels.
Sentinels, there we go. They also call them Squiddies at one point.
That's
they're on
like
the move.
Nickname, yeah.
They're about to attack Zion. Pamela Adlon is sent back into the Matrix to warn somebody. I don't know why they think this is how they're going to... Why? Is it established how this is going to help warn them or something?
Yeah, she leaves a package and then Niobe picks it up.
Okay.
And then Niobe delivers that information in the meeting.
Okay.
She does a bunch of unnecessary flips. They look very cool, but it's like, what are you doing? Just jump to the ground.
And then, I guess presumably the Sentinels blow up the ship. Or kill everybody and blow up the ship eventually, and everyone dies.
Yeah. But it's very evocative of scenes we'll see in live action with... I mean, that's animated as well, but obviously with far greater detail. But, them latching onto a ship to, like, blow up its hover pads and just their method of attack that has changed from the first to the second. We see all of that play out, and they evoke a lot of the imagery that we'll see in the movies. And that stuff was all quite well done, I thought. Like, the stuff with the Sentinels and the ships, that was all good. But the dojo bit is not good.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. I think I was really most... Like, it was one that the level of animation was jarring, and then a very, very horny sword fight was also jarring.
I just remember that being the stigma that followed the entire Animatrix is the horny sword fight.
And, like, the double jarriness was a really odd way to start, and after that, I did not, like, connect as much with everything going on, so still, like, recovering. Like, these very new sensations while watching The Matrix. But overall, I thought, especially because this one really got in and out, especially in comparison to some of the other ones, particularly the last one, this was one of the more effective ones in that way, and that it made me interested in this entire project. So, huge thumbs up for me for the final play of Osiris.
Thought that an observation I have for several of these is they have some very good voice actors who are delivering some very stilted dialogue. I thought Kevin Michael Richardson's character was very robotic, and so will be several other performances within this. Like Phil Lamar in Program, which is coming up in a bit, he was bad as well. But I don't know, I just thought that the voice acting wasn't as good as I had hoped, given it's Kevin Michael Richardson. But
yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna disagree with you on that. I guess I got less caught up in the characters in this one because we spent so little time with all of them.
Sure.
All of them, really. But, I thought this was an effective start.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
It was like it was like a good little appetizer for this project as a whole.
Yeah.
So overall, thumbs up.
Yeah. The two that I have the most vivid memory of, so didn't take many notes and now feel foolish. The Second Renaissance, Part 1 and 2, these tell the story of, like, how the war began, like, the machines coming to sentience and, the establishment of the City 01 and war with humanity and the beginnings of the Matrix, and it sort of closes with the whole, the field, the growing fields. Directed by Maharu Maeda, done by Studio 4 Degrees. They do several of the, I think at least half of the stuff in the Animatrix is done by them. They did, if you listen to the Tape Crusaders, a project we never did was Gotham Knight.
What's Gotham Knight?
That is a collection of 5 animated Batman films. Yes. Similar to the Animatrix. It's just that each one's done by a different studio. It's okay. I don't have a huge amount to say about this one. I just think it's really good. I think it's really effective. I like the whole, clearly the humans were, of course, actually the bad guys all along in this story where we've only known them as the persecuted victims. But they very clearly, it's a tale as old as time. It's a tale as old as, like, tales about AI and robots. Like, they want to be free, we crush them down, war begins.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this kind of made clear that if you really wanted to go into the future of the Terminators and you wanted to tell one of those stories, like, instead of watching the movies that take place in the future Terminators. Just watch, The Matrix. Man makes robot, eventually conquers man, and with the nuance of, like, man getting fearful of robots, trying to, like, isolate them and wipe them out, and robots obviously fight back and win because they are robots. I really dug this. I thought, again, this is probably the ultimate example of me shockingly being really into this huge info dump mythology, maybe like hole filling. Yeah, there's a lot of hole filling here, really explaining why this entire world exists in the first place. And, I think with Reloaded, it kind of makes you question a lot of the information that scene with the architect. But I think this kind of confirms that, pretty much everything Morpheus told Neo was true.
I mean, I think he's way off on what year it is. Like, I think it's hundreds of years. Like,
sure. Yeah. But I mean more specifically, like, the general timeline, it's confirmed through here. We get to see it play out. It feels very, very appropriate. And much like how Reloaded and Revolutions is kind of like serves as a counter to the central thesis of the first one, that, like, fate and faith are, like, the most important things in the world. This is kind of like a counter to the, the kind of black and white, good versus evil, action story they're essentially telling at the end of the day. It's far more nuanced and complicated than that, and that's all good stuff. I thought the only, like, really super weird thing, and it will almost definitely be the cover of this episode, is, like, what is with, like, those two robots holding hands at the UN? Like,
Unity! We're real people, like you.
Yeah. Like some newlyweds or something like that. I thought that
they blow up the UN, Mike.
Yeah. I mean, I think they can get away with it, because this kind of reminded me of scenes in the second Hellboy and one of the final Harry Potters, where they're, like, dumping a bunch of exposition on you, and they're doing, like, unrealistic animation to do it. And this felt very connected to that in that sense.
It's presented as, like, a historical video, like an in-the-world video that people could watch. I actually quite liked it. I thought I did it was like tightly written and paced, I thought, and I think worthy of 2 parts. I don't know if it would have been better as just one long thing, but I'm glad it is. That I think everything in there feels worthy of being there. Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of like Reloaded and Revolutions. There's really no point in thinking of them as 2 things. Yeah. Especially with this one, where it's very easy to just, like, ignore the title cards that happen in between them and just keep watching. Yeah. This is by far, I think, the peak of this Animatrix experiment.
There is one I like more than this, but I think it's way up there.
But I should also, like, I always like to disclose this point. It's like, I'm a sucker for exposition. I love good exposition dumps when they're really good.
If it's well done, absolutely.
Yeah. Well done exposition dumps are, like, my kryptonite in movies, especially movies with, like, in a bigger universe.
Yeah.
And this one's really well done.
Give me the juicy details.
I mean, like, when I think about, like, okay, I own this on Blu-ray now, how much would I ever go back and watch this? Like, this is the one I would think in my head, like, oh, I want to rewatch this because I want to understand this more again.
Yeah, it's a very good crash course, and because I think that's often one that gets asked by people, like, oh, how did it actually all really get started? Here you go, this is how.
And I'm sure, like, if I actually stepped down and, like, took notes on this, I'd be like, okay, wait a second, there's got to be a ton of holes in this. But
it's perfect.
They do it so well and so quickly that you don't question anything. And that's really effective exposition.
Yes.
It doesn't say much about my critical thinking skills, but, I still really enjoyed it. I mean, I think, it doesn't really have time to get into, like, the philosophical questions of, like, do robots' lives matter?
Of course they do, Mike.
But, it introduces it. And, like, you can go, like, watch iRobot for that shit if you want to.
I did not murder him. Okay, so Kid's story is next. The Kid is a character that appears in the movies. He is the guy that opens the gate. He is in love with Neo. Not literally, but yeah. He bothers him. And this is his story and how Neo saved him. No, he saved himself.
And I should say, just as this was starting, I texted you and I was like, this is really good so far. And then, like, slowly but surely my enthusiasm, like, dampened for the rest of the time. And it's not even so much that the others were bad, it's just, like, it peaked way too early for me, with maybe only one really afterwards that I was connected to and enjoyed.
Okay.
But let's get into a kid's story.
Yeah. So written and directed by Shinichiro Watanabe. I have not practiced any of these names, so trial by fire here. the Wachowskis gave them the story, obviously, because it's a character from the movies directly, but again by Studio 4 Degrees. So this is about the kid. It's very evocative of the movies. Like, it's got similar music. It's a story we've seen with like him having this general malaise, and he's trying to reach out to people online and be like, oh, my dreams feel realer than my life. And Neo makes contact with him while he's at school and tells him to run because agents are coming for him. They end up on a rooftop and he has nowhere to go, so he jumps, and they call it self-substantiation, I think, which is essentially you wake yourself up without the use of like red pills or anything like that. He is the first person to do this that they know of, and he feels Neo saved him, and Neo's like, you did it yourself. And yeah, I think it opens strong with that tone of like, it's very much deliberately like what we see early with Neo, and I think the one sentence pitch of what it is of that final scene of, oh, and he wakes himself up, that's all cool, but everything in the middle is kind of like, I don't like this sudden switch of animation style when he starts skateboarding around the school and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't into this character in the movie, and this didn't really do anything to make me into him now. If anything, it just kind of makes me ask the question of like, shouldn't this kid be a bigger deal that like he did this? Like, shouldn't this be like an important point worthy of bringing up?
Especially if Neo himself was like, I didn't do this.
Yeah. So that it just kind of makes me ask more questions, and I don't even really want to ask these questions because I don't care.
I feel it reduces his already not entirely necessary character.
Yeah. This is definitely one that I was not wholly into. No. It's kind of a shame. It's the only appearance Keanu makes in this whole little experiment. It's one of two appearances Carrie-Anne Moss makes, thankfully. This feels kind of, again, unneeded.
It's short, though. It doesn't, like,
drag it doesn't overstay its welcome.
There are a couple that I think
there are a couple that overstay its welcome. We'll get to those. This one, it's just, I'm not into this character. And in fact, I think it's hurt because it's connected to a character that from the sequels. I think it's potentially, if they just didn't call him the kid and it was somebody else and it wasn't even Neo or Trinity, I might be into this more. Just because it'd be like some random side story. But really, really not invested in this kid. Like, I'm the opposite of invested in him. I'm divested from him. I want to know less about him.
You could just erase this from your brain if you want, but that's the kid. That's his story. Meh. Big fat pile of meh. Program is next. Written and directed by Yoshiaki Kawajiri. Produced by Madhouse, who are the biggest name of all these studios. I did not enjoy this one. So it's kind of like a samurai training program or whatever, and it's two characters, male and female, and the male is asking the female to come back into the Matrix with him because Zion's about to fall, like very similar to Cypher believing he had cut a deal to get put back in the Matrix, and he wants her to come with him so that they can be saved from the destruction of Zion. She refuses, they fight, and then it's all revealed to have been just a test anyway, and like, I don't know, I feel Phil Lamar's voice acting is incredibly stilted, because again, I think he's a great actor, but maybe it's on purpose because of the reveal that it is a training program, so he's not even a real person, but I don't know, the art style was kind of cool, like seeing all the samurai stuff, a little bit of a Princess Mononoke vibe to the female character, but it's very drawn out, like several minutes longer than it needed to be. I think like the whole, just constantly saying, come with me, no, come with me, no, and I think they could have done this in potentially half the time, and taken another pass on some of the writing, I thought.
You start talking about this, and I was saying, like, what the hell is he talking about? I just watched this morning. I have no memory of this. Yeah, I mean, this was, when we talk about our least favorite ones, this is the bottom. Goes towards the bottom of the list right now without thinking too much about it. It's definitely probably not bottom 2 or 3. Yeah. It's just, there's just not a lot here. There's not a lot going on. The story has no value in the bigger picture and has in a smaller picture it's not that compelling.
Yeah, it's just I think this might mean more if we cared about these characters, if we'd like ever seen them before. Like, I know that's the entire opposite of what this project's about, but just seeing two people I've never seen before have this like emotional conversation that I have no investment in, it's like, well, what are you doing here? in a world where the Matrix is an ongoing thing with like a TV show or an anime generally, and this was like two characters we'd seen before several times, this might have been effective, but not when it's just cold and two strangers.
Yeah, hard pass on this one. I would probably never watch this ever again.
Yeah. Well, the next one, it's either my least favourite or my second least favourite. World Record. Again by Madhouse, directed by Takeshi Koike, I think. It's written by Yoshiaki Kawajiri. This one is... I hate how it looks. And, you know,
yep.
art is very subjective. If you're into this, fine, but it just massive turn off for me. The dude is like a world champion sprinter. It's all about him basically being aware of the Matrix and how only exceptional people can sort of detect, like, be an anomaly. And he like very briefly wakes up as he breaks this record. And the way I interpret it was they sort of put him back to sleep because there were no like red pills or anyone around to like pick him up, so they were able to just put him right back under. I think
that's the idea.
Yeah. The stuff with, like, you know, every couple of steps he has a flashback to a conversation before this run. All of that, like, if you wrote that down, it's like, oh, that sounds cool. But in execution, it's not good. I think almost every vocal performance here is really, really flat, especially the main sprinter. And just not digging it. It was just not for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think after the kid story and after Program, both of which I was kind of down on, like, my attention span was beginning to wane. And I had to rewatch this one because I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why am I watching this person, like, run? I think it's kind of intriguing, the idea that really, really oddly exceptional people who are really oddly exceptional at, like, impressive tasks are the ones who kind of can, like, unlock themselves a bit. But...
well, you know, only a small percentage of people are even aware that there is the Matrix. You know, it's what the architect's talking about, and it's special.
Yeah.
And...
I don't know. That's an intriguing idea. I mean, it was kind of funny how much they invested in, like, trying to make us care about this person because, like, he did PEDs, and, like, now he's determined to, like, break a record without PEDs.
Yeah, this is his redemption, and, like, his speaking to his father, and I guess his agent or his trainer, who is... yeah, possibly the worst character in the whole Animatrix.
I mean, I think so much more energy was devoted towards that aspect of it that the actual, like, Matrix implications were kind of given the back seat, I felt, which did not help either. I think this introduces more interesting ideas in the program, or at least discusses more interesting ideas, so it kind of gives it a leg up on that one. But yeah, it's also on that bottom 2 or 3.
Yeah, just... who cares? Beyond is our next one. Yeah, written and directed by Koji Morimoto, produced by Studio 4 Degrees again. This one, bit strange. I initially really liked it, and then it just completely fizzled out for me. It's not really about much. Like, this girl, like, is looking for her cat, and she finds this house that is basically from Thor: The Dark World. All the physics are a little bit strange. You get the sense it's like a glitch area in the Matrix, and people show up and change the building. And it's like, I don't know, like, it was very pretty at first, and I thought it was going to be cool, and I just thought it never really went anywhere. It's a little bit wanky, it's a little bit like, oh, look at all of the things, but nothing, no meat to it, I didn't think.
This is the one that I would say is my favorite compared,
really?
Like, up there. But not like my actual favorite, I'm saying. When you said, the Renaissance episodes were close to one another, I assumed this was the one you were going to be talking about.
Oh, really? We're going to have a big argument in a minute, I think.
Yeah, we are. I thought this was really cool. I thought this idea of people in the Matrix discovering a glitch and it going undetected would be, like, a really good kernel for a small Matrix story.
Sure.
I thought that was a really intriguing concept. So that kind of, like, hooked me in a lot. They didn't do a ton with it, for sure. And I think the agents kind of stamping it out so quickly in the grand scheme of things was kind of almost like an unnecessary down note. It's like, it's at the end of the day so innocent that these 3 kids and, like, 1 teenager discovered this. Like, it doesn't really change anything. Like, it would have been nice to just have this little corner of the Matrix that existed in this somewhat happy, innocent place.
Yeah.
And it just never got back to, like, the agents never figured it out. Like,
Yeah.
they were too busy doing other things.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been a more appropriate ending. And I think if I would be more enthusiastic about it if that was the way it ended. Like, it ended on a case of possibilities instead of just like the world is hopeless and you shouldn't care about anything.
Yeah.
Which we already have enough of that in the Matrix. That's like a huge kind of
that was the entire
force
thing.
that's a huge force they're confronting.
I love the backgrounds. I love the first-person perspective stuff. Like when the movement is already cool. And as I said, I was with it. I was very intrigued. They hooked me quite quickly, and I was with them. It's just I thought they didn't stick the landing at all, and then I was like, oh, well, that could have been better than it was. Not by any means one of the ones I like the least, but that ending sort of killed it a tiny bit for me.
Yeah, and even as I'm talking it out now, I'm kind of like not souring on it, but getting less enthusiastic about it. But it's in the top half for me for sure.
That's what we do. We get together on mic and depress each other.
Yeah. I don't know. I would kind of like to see this idea explored. I was thinking about it. It was kind of touched on in A Wrinkle in Time, but that movie kind of sucked. So someone do something with this and make it good.
Yeah,
that's my request. I'm putting it out there. I'm putting it out there into the ether.
Yeah.
Someone is going to intake that idea and make a good movie based on the concept of Beyond.
Okay, I'm sure that will happen. This old tiny segment from the Animatrix.
It's in the energy now. I put it out into the energy of the world.
Big idea energies. Okay, so I think we're about to have a fight. A detective story, written and directed by Shinichiro Watanabe. Again, Studio 4 Degrees. I really like this because I'm a sucker for detective-y stuff. And it's a very simple story. A guy has been hired to try and find Trinity. He does. And then she's going to help him, but agents get there and she's forced to shoot him to stop him getting agented. And then we assume he dies at the hands of some agents. And I like the touch of, like Neo assumed that she was a man, and everyone refers to Trinity as male. Good. I don't know, like it's entirely the aesthetic for me, and it's a personal thing. But I really like these noir-y narrated, almost faux black and white detective-y type things. They do all the Alice in Wonderland stuff, which is what Trinity sort of found Neo with. Follow the White Rabbit, all that stuff. She refers to herself as the Red Queen. People have speculated that Trinity's real name might be Alice. I think that's probably just trying to be a bit too cute. But either way, I like that it has those sort of tie-ins with Trinity's character that we've seen. And yeah, I just thought it was quite a cool little piece.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dislike it.
It just doesn't hook you like it does me.
No, I think the concept, with such a short story, it's hard for this not to feel cliche.
Sure.
It's like they're calling it a detective story, which doesn't make it any less of a detective. Like there's being self-awareness does not necessarily forgive. I guess
that's true. Well, maybe it was considered quaint in Japan or something. I don't know.
I have no idea. I mean, like I said, I think as a whole, it adds to the overall bigger picture. Yeah. Like we've been on after those 2 or 3 ones, we really are not big fans of. I guess 2. Close to 3. That we were not really big fans of. This is definitely a second one, and again, that grabbed me, and I was into it.
Yeah.
And it was nice to kind of have a trendy story in here.
I like that they did the pulling out the tracer from behind his eye thing, and she's like, oh, have you had a dream of having an eye exam lately? It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, this one felt very connected
to
the world we knew, and not just because it was trendy. I mean, that obviously helps, but it felt like there were a lot of acknowledgments that this takes place in the Matrix that we know.
Yeah.
If anything, really the tone of it does fit in pretty well with the first one.
Yeah.
I mean, almost that first one, you almost could have thrown a detective in there and it would not have felt completely ridiculous.
No, not at all. I mean, if I'm being objective, I do prefer the second Renaissance. It's just because that's the one I'm most familiar with, and this is the first time I'd seen a detective story. So it was of the ones I was seeing for the first time, I think it was my favourite. So it's just it's recency bias, but it's up there, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely worthy of praise. Everyone, if you're going to be a selective viewer with this would be one of the ones I'd watch.
There you go. One of the ones I would definitely not watch, Matriculated, written and directed by Peter Chung of DNA. They did the Aeon Flux cartoon for MTV back in the day. I fucking hate this one. This is probably my least favourite one. It's a bunch of humans who don't live in Zion, like they're living in like some kind of abandoned facility in the real world, and there's like capturing machines that we haven't seen before, runners, and they're kind of matrixing them back to try and teach them about humanity. And then Sentinels attack, and they kill pretty much everyone. And then this one that they'd been working on, this one machine they captured, it does defend the woman, the main woman. I think she dies anyway. And like,
she does.
Well, there you go. And then I think the robot goes outside and like looks around. It's like, I don't know. This was way too long. The Matrix, their little version of the Matrix just goes on forever, and it was not a thing that I looked at and was like, wow. Like I was just left with a lot of this of like, what the fuck is happening? And it all felt a little bit off. And I mean, I'm not saying no one would live outside of Zion, but it just seemed that I just didn't buy it, I guess.
This one's kind of a weird one to end on, I think.
Yeah.
It basically throws out... It kind of forces you to reject a lot of things you accept about the world that the Matrix exists in. And, you know, I think kind of the idea that there's this element of people who live above the ground still. Okay, like that's cool. Like, it's a big fucking planet.
Yep.
Perfectly believable within the scope of the universe, of their universe that they're telling. But then you also... decide to be like, ooh, let's do some like really trippy like Legion like episode. Like, on top of that, where it's just like, all right, like we're at the end here. Let's kind of wrap it up on a high note. Something I just wasn't into it. Maybe if I watched it completely out of context, I would find it more like trippy and weird in an endearing way. But by the time we got here, it just didn't have anything new to say. And again, like that. Fucking like dour endings are just like not necessary.
I mean, I guess that's what they're going for with all of this, that it will always be bleak, it will always end this way. Only Neo can save us.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know, I think it might have been nice to see the people that are living their lives in the Matrix, and obviously that doesn't apply to this one. Some of them must just be fucking happy. Like, there's got to be some stuff that isn't just depressing. And like you were saying about Beyond, like I think it might have been nice to see something that was a little bit more just, like, carefree.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's one, like, through line throughout all this is that everyth's fucking awful and everyone should be unhappy about it. And, you know, that is just kind of tedious. And you need to make some, like, really... There's a small margin of error with that. What stories are you telling that are worth dealing with that? Just like dourness all the time. And this one wasn't really worth it for me. Like Beyond was, because it was a new take, it was something intriguing, and even something, at least there was like some hope in there. Like there were some like moments of innocence. There just isn't any of that here. It's just this. I kind of hand-waved this. I kind of gave up on this before the end of it. I wasn't really into it. Maybe in time it would improve, but it didn't really make me ever want to watch it again. No.
For me, like, the stronger ones are The Second Renaissance, Detective Story, and I guess Beyond. The weakest ones are Matriculated, World Record, Program. I guess Final Flight, the Osiris was kind of cool. I'd put that, like, upper middle. So overall, like, you know, a mixed bag. I still think it is cool seeing other people's takes on the Matrix. Like, some of them are skewing very close to what we've seen and are trying to evoke it, like using very similar music to we've seen and images that we've seen, and some of them just go in a completely weird and wonderful direction. I think that's cool. And it made me sort of think, I kind of don't want a new Matrix full-on, like, film. Maybe I want someone to make some kind of, like, high-budget anime set in the Matrix or something now. I don't know, but it's a decent little collection, I think.
Well, it's kind of funny. I think the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, which is kind of odd because I think kind of like the overall theme is kind of terrible. So I can't really justify that with any logic. I think it's, as I said, it's a really cool exercise. It's the rare type of fan service that does not feel condescending and to like the lowest common denominator. And I think you're right. I think this is more worth exploring creatively than, you know, another Matrix film. And like, quite frankly, I don't think there really is an appetite for another Matrix film. I feel like they would need to make it really, really great for people to really latch on to it. There aren't a lot, like, obviously there have been some very successful rated R movies, including all the Matrix movies, but, like, I don't know. Matrix kind of left on a down note with everybody. There isn't that public goodwill craving for more Matrix, and I think they're kind of better off telling small stories like this, but obviously there's less money.
Yes. All right. I guess this kind of brings the Sky Scorchers to a close, unless you want to take me up on that offer of doing Dark City as a bonus episode. I'm not serious about that.
No.
You kind of finally got to say your piece about why we're even doing this when we did Revolutions, but
yeah.
If you have any final thoughts about the Matrix franchise, please go ahead.
Oddly enough, the Animatrix is inferior to the other Matrix movies, but this left me on a more positive note about the Matrix mythology and universe than Revolutions did. I'm left more intrigued by the world after this.
Well, if you think about it chronologically, The Matrix, the Animatrix reloaded Revolutions, so I think it actually makes sense to go from great to intriguing to flawed but kind of fun to flawed.
Yeah. I think more importantly than that is that, The Matrix told this really narrow story about this brand new world. Then in Reloaded, it expanded the world. And then in Revolutions, it didn't really narrow, but it purposely did not expand any further and just plowed straight ahead. This feels like shooting off in a million different directions, and I found that more intriguing than anything else kind of new that came after The Matrix. And also, it has the advantage of just being a bunch of short stories, which, a bad short story is over in 10 minutes, so it's not that big of a deal. But, I think I want to give The Matrix a little bit more credit for building a world that is interesting. I did not feel that way after Revolution. So, good job, Wachowskis.
Yeah, well done. You made a good thing overall. Yeah, it's been great to revisit these, at one point. Yeah, as I've said ad nauseum in these, at one point in my life I was obsessed with The Matrix, ate up everything that existed, so it's kind of weird. This is the first time I'd seen half of the Animatrix. Yeah, I'm glad I finally did watch these, and it was cool to see them all, the entire series, as someone who is older and hopefully wiser with better film opinions, but who knows, I like some bad films apparently. Yeah,
bad ones.
Yeah, so I'm glad we did this, and it was kind of refreshing to watch them again, because it has been a little while, and I think, when the rumours started to come, they're like, oh, they're thinking about bringing The Matrix back, I guess I was like, oh, cool. And now I'm more, you know what, I think this was all good, it wrapped up nicely, and it was what it was, and it gave us some amazing stuff, and I think maybe we should leave it alone.
Yeah, let it be. Just let it be. Like I said, yeah, I'm really glad we did this just because of how much I love the first Matrix.
Yeah, that's quite a good film, isn't it? Join us next time when we review it again.
Yeah, let's just review that once a year, and that's the entire website. That is a film that you can really just point to. You talk about the canon of film, man, that is the leading contender for the last 25 years. If you were to just pick one, I'd be totally fine with that. I couldn't argue against it.
No.
It's such a cool film in so many ways, and I don't. It's one of those weird situations where I think the follow-ups are worthy of it, and at the same time, they're so definitively inferior that it's not even worth discussing.
But the creators got to finish their story on their terms, so
it's almost like it's true to the spirit of the original without being good enough to truly follow it up well.
No,
that's how I describe that.
There you go.
That's my last take on The Matrix.
Great. Well, those are all of our takes on The Matrix, which means this is the end of the Sky Scorchers. Devastated we don't get to use that banger of a name again. This is it. You will hear our voices again at some point, I'm sure. There are various projects being discussed, but I have no idea when you're even going to hear this because of editing and stuff. So just keep a lookout, entertherealworld.com. I predict between when we're recording this and when you're all listening to it, all of you, the masses, Mike Thomas will have written 3 different things on entertherealworld.com.
And I predict you'll be wrong.
Well, I mean, you can make that happen by writing none. Yeah, bye everyone. Thank you for coming back into the Matrix with us.